Welcome to In the Envelope, a podcast from Backstage, the #1 resource for actors and talent seekers. I am your host, Jack Smart, awards editor at Backstage, and I'm here to guide you through every aspect of the entertainment industry with the help of some of your favorite stars. These intimate, inspirational conversations with today's most award-worthy film, television, and theater artists provide you, dear listener, advice on how to live the creative life, personal stories of success and failure alike, and maybe, just maybe, a tantalizing glimpse in the envelope.
And unless you try to climb these mountains, you're not going to grow. It doesn't happen magically. You don't wake up suddenly and say, I'm a great serious actor. You learn how to do this shit by doing the shit.
Testing 1, 2, 3. How do I sound? Hello, listeners. Welcome to In the Envelope. This is Jack reporting from my couch, where it's pretty much my podcast recording studio and my workstation and my downtime. A lot of us are, indoors, spending a lot of time trying to adjust to a new normal. Something that our guest on today's episode, Nathan Lane, and I discussed quite a bit. Obviously, you know Nathan Lane if you've seen The Producers, if you've seen The Birdcage, if you've even seen his recent appearances on Modern Family. Those of us who have been frequenting the theater for years have known Nathan for years. He's been in every Broadway show ever. If I had to play favorites, which I'm, gun to my head, I would say Nathan Lane is possibly my favorite stage actor. And this interview does a good job of exposing a little bit of his process, his approach, his philosophy. At one point, he calls acting for the stage going into battle. He also has some fascinating responses to what is one performance every actor should see and why. Just so you guys know, for the most of the future episodes coming down the pike, we do ask a series of backstagey questions. You will have read many of those on backstage.com. Nathan had some great answers to those. Another thing that we discussed, though, was, as I mentioned, life in quarantine, life in our kind of adjusting to this new normal, and life in the age of the coronavirus. We did bring up Nathan's longtime friend and collaborator, Terrence McNally, who is a staple of the Broadway community for a long time, really a groundbreaking playwright who launched the careers of many artists, including Nathan. And he passed away from complications due to COVID-19 very recently. And we at Backstage mourn his loss, and we, the theater community, mourn his loss, those of us who are his fans, and all of the artists like him and all of the entertainers who have been affected by this deadly disease. And I'd just like to take this moment to say thank you to our medical staff and essential workers, everyone from doctors and nurses and medical staff to our grocery store employees and delivery people who are keeping the world going and trying to get us back to normal. These are very strange and unusual times, and I think this interview with Nathan Lane addresses that, and many of our interviews for the foreseeable future, which have certainly all been recorded remotely and within this new normal. So until things start to change and Hollywood and Broadway and all of entertainment gets back up and running, we will be asking questions about how artists and aspiring actors and aspiring artists of all levels, how can they stay active and engaged? How should they be coping with these strange and unusual times? Even if the answer is, I don't know, here's what I'm doing. But we are asking those questions in a lot of the upcoming interviews. So I hope that these will be somewhat of a guide, a map perhaps, through a truly unprecedented time in the entertainment world and in the world. So without further ado, let's get to this fabulous conversation with Nathan after a quick break. Hey, if you are an actor or an aspiring actor, someone at the beginning of your artistic career, and you haven't signed up for Backstage yet and you don't know how it works, I have good news for you. Backstage is offering 30 whole days completely free just for our In the Envelope listeners. If you visit backstage.com/subscribe and enter the code ENVELOPE, you will have full access to the site where you can make a profile, upload a headshot, upload a reel, start applying to the thousands of casting notices uploaded every single day on the world's #1 casting platform. Again, we are giving listeners of this podcast 30 days completely free to try out Backstage. Go to checkout, that's backstage.com/subscribe, and enter the code ENVELOPE. If you want to be in contention for an Emmy or for an Oscar or for a Tony or for a SAG award, do as many of the guests on this podcast have suggested and use Backstage. We are here for you. Again, free 30-day trial, backstage.com/subscribe, enter the code ENVELOPE. Nathan Lane is adored by audiences around the world, and especially in the New York theater scene, where he's totaled over 20 Broadway credits, including the recent Angels in America and Gary. Earning a SAG award, 6 Primetime Emmy nods, and every theater award in the book, including 3 Tonys, Nathan has brought his brilliant comedic timing to The Birdcage, The Producers, Modern Family, and more, but has recently demonstrated his dramatic chops, including in Showtime's new series from John Logan, Penny Dreadful, City of Angels. Here it is, Backstage's chat with Nathan Lane. First of all, could I ask you to lavish praise on Backstage and your fond memories of using Backstage?
Well, certainly when I was starting out, way back when I moved to New York in the late 70s, yes, it was everyone would buy Backstage, and I don't know if you remember Show Business.
Uh-huh.
I remember Backstage was sort of blue, had a blue heading, and Show Business was red. No political affiliations, just
gotcha.
Yes, and so certainly, yes, I read Backstage and was interested in seeing what was going on, and then also just articles and so it was a very, very helpful guide in the early days of my career, and yes, and I had a great time talking to you a couple of
years. I know it was in the middle of Angels in America. You sensed, which was amazing, and then you sensed it, Gary, which was just one of my favorite things I've seen. It was amazing.
You were the one. Well, yeah, I loved doing Gary. I mean, it was a strange and difficult journey, but that play, I mean, I was very proud that we brought Taylor Mack to Broadway, because I think he's a unique and extremely gifted writer and talent. And it was really Scott Rudin who pushed to do it on Broadway. And when I had read it, I had initially said, perhaps we should do this somewhere quietly and figure this out. And he said, no, we're going to do this in the middle of Times Square.
Yeah.
And that's the way we should do it. And, it's, so you're in the fishbowl, and it's difficult because you aren't allowed to fail or make mistakes that way because people come now and they're at the first preview and they judge and they write things online. And so you have to just keep your head down and focus on the work. And the play is a difficult piece to pull off. And so when you're under that kind of pressure and nerves, it was twice as difficult. But those ladies are extraordinary actresses. And look, it was, I would never want to go through it again, but it was an extraordinary experience. And by the time we got towards the end of the run, where we were confident enough with the material and knew what we were doing, and had then played it to different kinds of audiences. And because it was a very divisive play, some people loved it, some people hated it, and wanted us all to die. And but by the end of it, we were playing it with the kind of confidence and understanding that the play needed. And it's a very as as I often said, the play had a very European sensibility. So the notion of the very the lowbrow, broad physical comedy, I've never seen so many people upset about fart jokes, and and dead body routines that anyway. Who knew Americans were so sensitive to that?
Right.
But they have a hard time. I do know that American audiences have a hard time dealing with that mixture of the intellectual and that kind of lowbrow comedy. I sort of went through that a bit on The Frogs, which is, essentially that's the whole Aristophanes mantra.
Right.
There's lowbrow comedy, and then it gets very intellectual, and there's a debate between Aeschylus and Euripides. So, it's a big ask for an audience.
Yeah, it's the ask.
And if you did that play in London, did Gary in London, they would have no problem with what the style and tone of it. And look, I understand that a play that ends with a chorus line of dead gladiators with huge dancing penises, mechanized penises, is unusual. I love that we did it in the middle of Broadway, or the middle of what's become the Mall of America, and upset people to that degree.
Absolutely.
I believe the Hollywood Reporter critic said it was the most batshit crazy thing on Broadway in many a moon. And I said to Scott Rudin, you should, in the ads, that should be
use that
at the top.
Oh yeah. That's great praise. Yeah.
Look, it just for all of people saying things like, when Broadway is so tired and it's the same formula, and it's musicals based on movies, or stars coming in for 18 weeks to do a classic play,
revival,
and same thing. Where are the new voices? Shake things up, and then you bring in an exciting new voice, Taylor Mack, a queer voice, and people were like, it turned into a restoration, dropping their fans and saying, heavens to Betsy, what fresh hell is this? And you want to go, oh, f*** you. That's why Broadway is dying. In this country, people are so f***ed up about sexuality, and
it's true.
Just get over it.
Yeah.
The look, I was in that play, I was sort of up on top of all the dead bodies. For people who haven't seen didn't see the play, that will sound strange, but I was standing on a huge mound of hundreds of dead bodies, and when I would look out and see the reaction, as the penises danced in rhythm, that was something to see. People, some people was roaring with laughter, and in total shock that we were actually doing it, and then just people who you could see were incensed and wished they had stayed home and watched The Bachelor. So there you are. But that's what makes horse races, as they say.
Yes. Well, I mean, how often are you conscious of how it's being received? You're not going to calibrate your performance and future performances based on how things are being received necessarily.
No, but I like to know. I mean, I don't like to sit down and read, word for word what people have said, but I like to have a general idea of of what I'm up against. So if. Because certainly in the past, I've done plays that, or musicals where if the reaction has not been positive, you feel it in the house. Literally, years ago, I did a play by Neil Simon called Laughter on the 23rd Floor.
Mm-hmm.
And in previews, people were laughing their heads off.
Mm-hmm.
And then Frank Rich wrote a review. He had it was towards the end of his tenure, and the last two plays he reviewed were Perestroika, the second half of Age in America, and Laughter on the 23rd Floor.
Oh, wow.
So he really dismissed Laughter on the 23rd Floor.
Oh, boy.
It was not very kind to it. And you felt it that literally the next night. People had been told, you probably shouldn't enjoy this. And then they didn't. And it took a while for that to be forgotten and to regain that trust with the audience.
That's so interesting. Yeah.
And, people giving themselves over to what it is they were actually seeing as opposed to what they were told to feel about this event. So, yes, look, another example, they just wrote about it in the Times, was the Addams Family were, which was reviled.
Oh, God.
By people, just reviled by them. And nevertheless, the audience wanted to see.
Yeah.
They loved the title, the brand name, those characters, and they liked the idea of myself and Bebe Neuwirth playing those.
Absolutely.
And so they showed up. They didn't seem to care what people had said about them. And then, and apparently, I don't know, what happened to, they keep talking about some, miracle cure they did on the road where they rewrote it and suddenly it magically was better. I have grave doubt that that's the case. I think just as it happened in New York, people liked those characters and wanted to see them again. So I think whether they had done any work or not, people still would have shown up, and high schools would have wanted to do the Addams Family. It's that popular a title.
Definitely.
So look, when you go through that, you have to. It's helpful to have that, to take that into consideration when you go out to do battle every night.
To do battle. Wait, doing battle with the audience or doing battle with...
Battle.
Okay.
It's like going into battle. You gear up and you go into battle. You got to try to convince, 1,200 people of a story.
Yeah.
And tell them this story. And sometimes it is a battle. Sometimes, sometimes half of them don't even want to be there.
Sure.
Their wives dragged them. Someone told them it was good. They wanted to get out of the house. Remember that? Wanting to get out of the house.
Right.
It is like going into battle.
It's violent. Yeah. It's combative. Cool. Yeah.
That's right. It's a life and death situation. That's 8 times a week.
Yeah, no, that's spot on. Because really on this podcast, we're just trying to distill actors' philosophy down to their kind of most essential selves. And you just hit the nail on the head. You walk out onto stage and you go into battle.
Very often.
Yeah, it depends.
Very often. Yeah. I mean, it really, obviously it depends on the piece and what kind of theater you're in and how intimate it is and the story that you're telling. But yeah, very often. It's in particular with musicals.
Oh, interesting.
It feels like you're going into battle.
The audience, is it safe to say the audience has a bigger role, is more of a scene partner in a musical than in a play?
In anything, the audience has a huge role. That's why we're talking now about, guys don't want to play sports without an audience. I mean, what's the point? I mean, late night talk shows, the comedy shows, they're doing this without an audience, and it's very difficult to do. You sort of, even their demeanor changes a bit because they're not getting that kind of feedback. And the audience is another character. If you're telling a story, you even in a drama where if you hear that kind of silence when it's that quiet, and how intently they're listening and feeling whatever is happening on stage, that is that's a tell. That's how you know things are going well, when it's that quiet. If it's about trying to keep 1,200 people from coughing. And if you can, you've really accomplished something.
Sure.
There's this other sonar that you have in the back of your head that, even though as concentrated as you're trying to be and dealing with your character's needs and wants and telling that story, you're still hearing what's the energy in the room, and how is this translating? It's always there. I mean, and if you're in a big emotional moment, perhaps you're not thinking about that, but you are. Especially in comedy, there is that part of the equation. How important the audience is, and God knows we're seeing that now. It's like,
absolutely.
Will people gather together in a group again right away to see a play? And sadly, I don't think so. I don't blame them.
Right.
I think it's going to take quite a while, and really until there's a vaccine. Yes. But certainly, we have people are going to be very wary about gathering again for not only theater, but ballet, concerts,
anything,
movies. They opened in China. They opened 500 movie theaters, and nobody went. They had to close them back down. So we're on a long journey back to.
It's a journey, yeah. And I did want to ask, what do you think the state of the theater community is now, and if and when? I assume it's when we are able to go to the theater again, as you say, maybe a long time from now. What do you think is gonna change about that, or what's going to be? I assume we're all just going to love the theater so much more than we already did.
Look, everything's going to change. It's not going to be the same. There's going to be a new normal, and then we're going to have to figure out together. Yeah. I think, look, being a producer these days, it must be terrifying. Because because of the unknown. We're in this strange 70s TV movie about a dystopian future. Yeah. And we have to, and we don't know what the ending is. So we're going to have to make judgments along the way about what people will do at first, and not jump back in too soon. Certainly I think people will be hungry for entertainment again, but they're being trained now in a way not to go to movie theaters. They can watch things at home. And if they have, if they can afford a kind of home entertainment system that you have a huge screen, it can be very comfortable, and you can get used to that. I mean, I love going to the movies. I love sitting in a big movie theater and watching something on a giant screen. I mean, that's the way movies used to be made, for that that experience. So that's the thing. We don't know. And that's what's so frustrating and frightening. I think, maybe people are going to have to rethink, ticket prices. People are going to have to rethink, how are we going to do this? Maybe we don't spend as much money on things. Maybe we can do things more simply. People are finding, someone does a reading of a play online and people love it. Yeah. So it's about you're hearing things in a different way because you don't have any distractions. It's just people speaking the words, and if they're good words, it can be incredibly meaningful, and you don't need all the bells and whistles. So I think we are headed for a big change, and some of it I think could be positive.
Yeah, like you're saying, it's just that we don't know. I mean, that's the biggest factor here.
That's it's surreal. It's a surreal and scary.
Definitely.
And it's forcing people to you have to take a look at yourself.
Absolutely.
It's a strange thing. This whole the running joke now is nobody knows what day it is.
Time is so strange right now.
Pandemic time is like you get up, you have some coffee, you think I'm going to vacuum, and then the next thing you know, it's 5 p.m.
Yeah, and just in terms of keeping yourself inspired, like you're saying, like if you've
No,
got
Jack,
a home.
I'm never going to get anyone to watch this show if we just keep talking about it.
I know. It's all doom and gloom, but like you're saying, like
But here's the good news. There's a
It
new
is good
show
news.
coming, and we have a captive audience.
captive audience. The show deals with quite a bit of death and destruction and supernatural, which is kind of fun.
Oh,
Maybe
yeah.
escapist. Yeah.
Yeah, John
I'm
Logan.
actually finding that period pieces are nice escapism because it's like, oh, well, that's in the past.
Right. Although
kinda nice.
I think it will resonate for today.
yeah.
But it's, the brilliant John Logan created
Mhm.
this. Obviously he did the first iteration of Penny Dreadful, and then has written this kind of in a response to what's been going on in the country. Natalie Dormer, a brilliant actress who
Yes.
plays many different parts and sort of whispers in people's ears and brings out the worst, darkest instincts. in
Yes.
people.
She's good at whispering. Yes.
So that's kind of what hangs over the whole story. But it's kind of, as I said before, Raymond Chandler meets Rod Serling. In the center of it is this very film noir, Chinatown type murder mystery of this Beverly Hills family that has been killed and left in the LA River. And my character is a very long time detective on the LAPD, Jewish, and he's been paired with a young Chicano, first-time Mexican on the force as a detective. And he becomes a mentor to him, a father figure. And they have to try to solve this case. That's just one of many storylines, interweaving storylines, and it's in this incredible tapestry. It's just John is an extraordinary writer, and this show is challenging. It's challenging material, and as it goes on, it gets. I think the show just gets better and better and better and better and better. And it's a great group of actors. I have to say, it was a real pleasure working with everyone. Just really, really strong. So,
and how did you get involved? Are you do you still audition? When was the last time you auditioned?
Oh, Jack. Jack.
Is that a personal question?
I haven't auditioned in a long time. If they don't know by now what I can do, then fuck them.
Exactly. Sure.
Yeah. If you don't, after 45 years of acting, if you don't trust me, then we wouldn't work well together.
Right. You're not like, here's my resume, in case you don't know.
This came about because John Logan very, very generously and kindly sent me an email and said he wrote this script and this character, and he wrote this character for me and hoped I would do it. And I read it and was just thrilled, and it came out of the blue. I knew John a little bit from New York theater, and but it's certainly reading it. I thought, well, this is the most interesting and complex, emotionally complex character I ever been given in film and television, and a lot of it. I think it was inspired, at least according to John, by he had seen me in a production of The Iceman Cometh.
Yes,
and felt that this, so finally, Eugene O'Neill paid off.
I could see a connection there. Yeah.
So anyway, he wanted me to do this, and I was just incredibly grateful and felt very lucky, and so that's how it happened.
And you're playing a Jewish man in this.
Yeah.
You were raised Catholic, is that correct?
Yeah, I was.
Can I ask, are you religious at all, or
no?
No.
I would say I'm pretty much an atheist.
Okay.
But I have often played Jewish characters,
Yes, like Roy Cohn.
like Roy Cohn, like Nathan Detroit, like
Yes.
it goes on and on. I have played a lot of Jewish people in my time. I'm sort of an unofficial honorary Jew.
Yes. Is it safe to say that theater and film and TV, like that's more your religion?
Theater,
Yeah, or acting, I guess.
acting is my religion. Is that what you say? Well, it's something. Well, it takes a lot of faith to
Yeah. Uh-huh.
be in the acting profession. I mean, it's storytelling.
Gotcha.
Would be more my religion.
Yeah, cool.
I mean, I don't, religion. I mean, has anything f***ed up this country more than religion? I really, you'd be hard pressed to find what else,
Uh-huh.
other than, racism.
Mhm.
But it's a toss up. And so, it's religion. You try to believe in, you try to believe in the best aspects of humanity. And when push comes to
Yes.
shove, people will do the right thing, but not always. Look, I think we have to, more than ever, we have to look after each other.
Yes, it is about being
Be
kind.
kind to one another.
Yes.
That's what's more important than what,
Yeah.
what quote unquote God you believe in.
You mentioned you mentioned O'Neill. I wanted to ask you about even with this role in Penny Dreadful, like you said in 2010, when that profile came out on you about the Addams Family, where they called you a last of the great entertainers, and you told me that you kind of made it your mission to really challenge yourself, but also to challenge audiences.
Right.
And I'm wondering, how have you chosen roles going forward since then? And is Penny Dreadful, does that count as like, yes, you liked the material, but were you also thinking, oh, this can really push me and push my type or my abilities?
Well, I just think it's sort of, this is as certain other roles like Roy Cohn, comes as a direct result of this experiment, this journey I went on 10 years ago.
Experiment, cool.
To see if you could change people's perception of you. Now, there are still people who, I'm doing these interviews every day, and there are still people who treat me like I was some Ringling Brothers clown who got out of a tiny car and went into acting last week. That's all I've done. And so, it's frustrating. But I think I have been able to do that, and this would certainly be a prime example of that. That someone saw my work in the theater in one of the great serious roles of Hickey in The Iceman Cometh, and thought, that's who I want to play this rather complicated detective. Look, there's stuff in this that no one in Hollywood would ever have given me this part. Otherwise,
Cool.
I had a stunt double. I was, beating people up and shooting guns, and it was the thrill of my life. It was just such a great adventure. And, look, it's also, and then there's a certain amount of homophobia that goes on.
Sure.
People know you're openly gay, and how could he ever play a detective?
That's still a thing in Hollywood. Sure.
Oh, sure it is. I'm sure, it's behind closed doors, I'm sure. But I'm sure that goes on. So there was, people will, I would say not that anyone should be, but if anyone was following my career, it wouldn't be as shocking as it will be to some people to watch me in the show and say, I've never seen him do anything like this.
But maybe for TV audiences, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. For people who only know me as Pepper Saltzman from Modern Family, this will be a revelation.
Yeah. And that is maybe is that your advice for actors too? Like, is that true for actors at any stage in their career? Like, if they want to think about challenging themselves, mean, like you're saying, the O'Neill play was not seen by many people, but it was seen by the right kind of people to then offer you more of the types of opportunities that you want. So is the advice like chase the work, follow the passion, maybe?
Yeah, always. But look, I was lucky enough to have reached a point in my career where I could suggest to Bob Falls, let's do the Iceman Cometh.
Yeah.
And I'll play Hickey, and Brian Dennehy can play Larry Slade, and whatever it might be. That, that I'm very fortunate that way, that I had a little bit of clout to initiate that kind of a project. So not everybody can,
Right.
actors are so dependent on being cast. And so I was at least at a point where I could do something like that. So I was very lucky. And then it's hard because at first you're going to be met with resistance.
Right.
When we opened in Chicago with The Iceman Cometh, there were critics who, referred to me as like, oh, this is like watching Regis Philbin.
Oh boy.
I can't accept this, or I can't. People they get nasty about it. Why won't you stay in the box that I've put you in?
Yeah, it's a little personal.
Yeah, well, it's all personal.
It's all personal. Yes,
it's all personal, pal.
Totally. It's acting.
I got nothing else but me. This is the equipment.
Yep.
And so. And people, and it's always somebody, they've never seen Iceman Cometh. They have no idea of what the part is or is supposed to be, or it's only basically half the time it's what they've heard. I would venture to say probably a lot of them didn't even read the play. So, so people will resist it and try to force you back into the role they think you should be playing, and don't ever try to change that, because I don't want to deal with that, because I think you can only do one thing, and honestly, it doesn't matter what they say. Honestly, it doesn't. It's about you and the work and the material, and what you will gain from taking on a role like that is incredible and valuable, and will only add to the next time you take on that kind of challenge. You try to climb that kind of mountain, and unless you try to climb these mountains, you're not going to grow. I mean, that's how you grow. It doesn't happen magically. You don't wake up suddenly and say, I'm a great serious actor. You learn how to do this shit by doing the shit, by going out night after night and trying to do the last act of Iceman Cometh. That's what separates the men from the boys. And if you don't, not everybody should do this, by the way. I'm tortured in that I felt I had to, that I would not be kept down by people's small-minded views of what I was. You're a clown, or you only play gay characters, and that's what they will try to do to you. And you can just give in to that and go, okay, that's what I'll do, or you can try to change things. So it's much easier to just entertain people.
Absolutely, yeah. To stay in the box. So
the fact that it's led finally to say, for example, this character is, to me, that's the story. That has been the journey. So, and it's, to me, it's incredibly moving that it happened. It just makes me weep that, John Logan, he's not doing this out of kindness. I mean, it is an act of kindness to say, I wrote this and I want you to do it. But he believes in you.
That you're the best for the part.
He believes in your talent.
Right.
And the fact that could happen at my advanced age is pretty extraordinary and
Sure.
and moving. And
No,
so
that's
I'm,
beautiful
you
advice.
know, I'm very, very. I have a lot of gratitude, and I feel very fortunate and lucky. But I also did take the initiative to see
Yes.
if I could do that.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. And I think that does apply to anyone at any stage of their career because, like you're saying, audiences and critics, we do tend to just put people in boxes, especially entertainers. Oh, that's that person that I remember from such and such. And that tends to be like what we think of them.
Well, look at
And so,
as an example, Zach Galifianakis. He was, brilliantly funny. And I saw him do he did this little indie film, and I can't remember the name of it now. That where he was in a mental hospital, and there was a young man who went there, and he was there, and he was totally believable and wonderful in this role, and which had emotional stuff, serious stuff. I mean, he was as always very funny as well at times, but it was a very different kind of role, and it didn't surprise me at all. I think he's brilliant. Right. I think he's a brilliant talent, and he was given the opportunity, and he was great. It doesn't, just because someone is brilliantly funny doesn't mean they can't also be a really good actor.
Sure. If anything, the great comedians are particularly adept at doing hard, intense, complicated drama, I would think.
Absolutely. Jason Robards was a very wonderful comic actor as well as being a great O'Neill tragedian. He was equally adept at comedy, wonderfully funny. George C. Scott, it was the same thing. When I worked with him in Present Laughter in 1982. He was hilarious in the Noel Coward role. So that's one doesn't negate the other. And there are people who can do both.
And if you as an actor can
limit them, by our he's only done comedy. Why is he doing this?
Right.
Why is he upsetting me by doing
me? Yeah.
It
does take initiative, right?
You kind of have to want to go after.
You have to want it. Yeah.
And you're going to have to weather that kind of response sometimes from people who are not going to give it up for you, who are not going to let you get away with it. And believe me, you don't get any points for ambition and taking on the challenge. They don't give a crap.
But it's
they don't give a crap what you're trying to do with your life. They have their own problems.
Yeah.
So
they're just there for the story.
So the miracle of this story is that over 10 years, I've gotten to this point and have played this part in this series.
That's really exciting.
There's your story, boys.
Absolutely. And that's the advice too. Like, do not let others put you in a box and dictate what they think of you. And don't try to change that for the sake of changing it. Change those perceptions if you really feel that you have more or different stuff to prove, to show.
Even if you fail.
Definitely.
You know what? Failure is probably the larger part of show business. Every once in a while, if you're lucky, you're in something that it all works and everybody's happy. But it doesn't matter if you fail. It's what you learn from it by taking on great material.
Yes.
Whether it's O'Neill or Shakespeare or Chekhov. These are the great writers. These are the people, Terrence McNally. I owe him everything. He just gave me, he was a believer in me and felt I had more to offer from the very beginning. And, I'd have no career without Terrence. And he certainly, I had been in New York for 11 years and I had been on Broadway and done off Broadway, but, I did the Lisbon Traviata off Broadway with him at Manhattan Theater Club, and it changed everything. And people suddenly saw me in a different light because of that. And I was lucky enough that he turned to me and said, I want to write things with you and for you. And, there were certain actors that he wanted to write for. And because he loved knowing who he was writing for specifically, and it helped him to write.
It really is lovely to hear about Terrence. And I'm so sorry for your loss and for our loss. And
no, he was a giant and a groundbreaker, and I
think really relevant to what you're talking about in terms of seeing in others, or seeing in actors, or seeing in artists maybe something that's not immediately apparent, and
someone going about living their life and being who they were and not being afraid, and from
taking risks
the get-go on Broadway. He wrote a play called "And Things That Go Bump in the Night," which again was reviled by the critics.
Oh wow!
It was a first play on Broadway, but had the first time they were gay characters who weren't suicidal or psychotic.
Right.
They were just living their lives, and I think there was a gay kiss. It was in 1960, whatever it was. It was unbelievable. And the fact that he received those kinds of nasty reviews and just kept going, they were kinds of reviews that might have stopped
absolutely
a less strong person, but he just kept doing it and writing and challenging us and himself, and it's an incredible legacy.
Yeah, that is the goal. Just challenge yourself and audiences too.
Yeah, whether they want
to do that, then
whether they want it or not.
They probably don't.
Sometimes you have to tell them what they want.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
What they need.
That's wonderful to hear. Thank you for all of this, Nathan. This is really, really great, as I knew it would be. Do you have time? Can I ask you some quick, rapid-fire, very backstagey questions?
Sure.
We ask everyone, going back in time,
right.
Where did you get your equity card, and where did you get your SAG-AFTRA card?
Yeah, I got my equity card. I was working for this little theater based in New Jersey that I had done a lot of shows for, called the Halfpenny Playhouse, and they did a tour of a musical called One for Good Measure, which was all about the metric system, because there were at one point America was maybe going to go metric, and they put together a musical review about it.
That's so
and
funny.
I was in this musical review called One for Good Measure, and it was equity. It was an equity tour, and that's how I got my equity card. And I was I was sort of this. That's the famous story of my name was Joe Lane, and there was already a Joseph Lane in Actors Equity. And that's how I became Nathan Lane.
Here you are on Zoom as Joe Lane. It's cool to see.
Oh yeah, they look at somebody put Joe. I don't know why.
Yeah,
it is my real name, but
yeah,
I don't
really
think myself as Joe anymore.
No, the fact that for any listener who doesn't know, the fact that you named yourself after Nathan Detroit and then played him on Broadway is extraordinary.
Well, Again, it's like a lot of luck and dreams coming true. A lot of dreams.
And manifesting. Yeah. Cool. Well, and what about equity? SAG. How did you get your SAG card?
You know what? I have no idea.
That's okay.
I think it had to do with if you were in equity long enough, you could get it then. I forget.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I had done. I had started doing commercials, so it might have been through doing commercials. I mean, that's how I sort of survived in my career in New York, was doing commercial work, and I did a lot of them. So it might have been, but that would have been AFTRA, right? So I don't. I honestly, I don't know how the hell I got it, but I did.
Okay, what about, this is a tough one. What about what is one performance that every actor should see and why? Film, TV, I guess it could be theater as well.
Oh, okay. That everyone should see and why.
Or just a favorite performance of yours.
Mike Nichols always used to say that A Place in the Sun by George Stevens, starring Montgomery Clift and Liz Taylor and Shelley Winters, that was the film that anything you need to know about filmmaking is in that particular movie.
Wonderful.
It's the most it's like a perfect film.
Wow.
Cool. The other night I watched a documentary about the making of Galaxy Quest, which is a favorite comedy of mine. It's such a great premise. And they quoted in the documentary that David Mamet, in a book he had written, had said there were 4 perfect films, which were The Godfather, A Place in the Sun, Dodsworth, and Galaxy Quest.
Oh my gosh. David Mamet.
I kind of know what he means. Galaxy Quest is kind of a perfect movie. So, and I always loved hearing the backstory of how it all came to be, and it's really interesting. So my favorite is from the Elia Kazan film A Tree Grows in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an actor in it by the name of James Dunn, who you would have seen in early films, in black and white films, who was, he was in a movie with Shirley Temple. He was an actor who had been around a long time, a very affable Irish, pure Irish face. And at the point that Kazan made the film, James Dunn's career he had been washed up. He was an alcoholic. But the character in the film was an alcoholic as well. And he knew that Dunn would bring something to it that would be incredibly authentic and vulnerable. And it's one of the most heartbreaking performances I've ever seen. It's a father and his relationship with his daughter. In this case, it was a very young actress named Peggy Ann Garner. And their relationship in the film, it just kills you. And there are moments in it the immense sadness in his eyes. And he wound up winning the Academy Award for it.
Oh, wow.
And it reminded me, I think on a personal level, it reminded me of my own father, who was an alcoholic, who died when I was around 11.
Yeah.
There was something about him that reminded me of, not so much physically, but he reminded me of aspects of my own father. Not that I was close with my father at all, but maybe it was kind of alcoholic father I would have liked to have had. Because he was so caring and devoted to her. But it is one of the great performances.
Wow. That's a good one.
Yeah.
These are excellent. I'm going to have to look all these up because this sounds great. And thank you for essentially having Mike Nichols answer that question too. That's wonderful.
Yes. Oh yeah. That's oh my God, what a movie that is. Yeah. Yeah.
And now that we're all inside, we have time to catch up on these old films. So
now is the time. But most of all, you want to see Penny Dreadful, City of Angels, Sunday, April 26th at 10 p.m. It will be a life-changing experience.
Very good. Okay, last question. I don't want to keep you too much longer. Last question. If you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that be? Or would you not change a thing?
Oh, Jesus. No. 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 I would, oh God, so many things. I would have said not to worry about, what to worry about, what not to worry about.
Sure.
I was so obsessed with my career, but I had to be, I don't know how else you become successful. I was obsessed with my career at the expense of personal relationships and at the expense of everything. So I maybe, going back, saying to myself, look at the bigger picture. And
sure,
it took me a long time to see that. And that it's not everything. It's not everything.
Yeah.
There are more important things. Although it's really, in a sense, it was all I had. I didn't have any money. I had nothing. I had no connections. I moved to New York and just started auditioning and hoping the best. And so it was, I certainly was ambitious, and I had drive, and I had some sort of, strange belief in myself that it would all work out. I don't know how. I don't know why, but I did. But I just was, nothing was going to get in the way of a career. And
because you are investing in it in order to, become successful.
Yeah. And so, and now, it's like, it's obviously, it's still important. And it's, I love doing it. I love acting so much. But, there are, now I think I see the bigger picture in a way that I couldn't back then.
The bigger picture. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's wonderful advice, Nathan. Thank you. This has been so great.
Thank you.
I'm feeling a little better about the state of our,
are you?
This quarantine era. I am. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, good. I have good days and bad days.
Yeah.
But I think we have to try to be positive.
Yeah.
We will come out of this.
We will. Yeah.
The better for it.
Well, yeah, and thank you for all of this lovely craft, but also career, and also just life wisdom. It's been great.
Yeah. Well, okay. All right. Well, you're welcome. And
thank you, Nathan. Yeah.
Nice to talk to you.
In the Envelope, an awards podcast, is recorded at Lotus Productions and Hyperbolic Audio in New York City and Soundbox LA, Mark Gross Studios, and Buzzies in Los Angeles. Thanks as always to podcast producer extraordinaire Jamie Muffett, and to the team at Backstage, Samantha Sherlock, Mark Stinson, Caitlin Watkins, and of course, Casey Howe. Visit Backstage.com, and don't forget, you can subscribe to Backstage by using the code ENVELOPE at checkout for a free trial. That's right, 100% free. For more exclusive content, join us on Facebook and Twitter at In the Envelope, and subscribe, share, and leave a comment. Who would you like us to interview next? Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time for another glimpse in the Envelope.